This
Bob
conference will
Cruz
now be
here.
recorded.
Hey everybody, Bob Cruz here. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Vivid Southern California Area User Group and Microfocus meeting. We're going to be talking about automate complexity, boost release velocity. So I've got Paul Bratlin here with me. Paul, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Yep.
So today's LUG event, everybody, is sponsored by Microfocus and Vivid's interim Southern County Area Local User Group leader, Jerry Sisson with Microfocus. And by the way, everyone, we have an opening for a leader in this region. So please reach out to Terry Sorello at Vivid to learn more about this incredible opportunity. And Terry is going to be sharing her contact information via the chat box with everyone. So again, we've got this opening for a leader in this region. Just reach out to Terry. And Paul, if you'll go to the next slide. And everybody, that is me. So I am Bob Cruz, very proud to be the community chair on the Vivid Board of Directors, also president, CEO of Checkpoint Technologies, a longtime partner with Microfocus in the ADM space. And then very excited in that today's speaker is Paul Bratlin, and he's just got a wealth of experience. So Paul is the Application Delivery Management Solution Architect at Microfocus with 10 plus years of experience using and administering Quality Center and Application Lifecycle Management. We all know that better as ALM. And in addition to using and administering ALM, Paul held roles as a developer, an automation specialist, and performance tester in small and large organizations. And immediately prior to joining Microfocus, he was a program director leading large-scale projects where he was recognized for overseeing multi-million-dollar projects that align business goals, technology solutions, process improvements, and bottom-line gains for the organizations. So welcome, Paul. We're all very excited to have you present today.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to let everybody know what to expect on today's GoToMeeting on our webinar here. And by the way, we are using GoToMeeting, not GoToWebinar. So that means all of you attending today can truly participate. And we really appreciate you joining us today and truly hope that you all are safe and healthy. These events are normally face-to-face, but due to the pandemic situation, we're holding it virtually. So in this way, one of the benefits is we've been able to invite companies all over Southern California. So welcome to everybody. Today's live session, it will be recorded, or I should say it is being recorded, and it will be posted for all Vivid members. The on-demand recording, slide deck, and Q&A will be posted on the Vivid website under the local user group's web page, and you can find this by going to the groups drop down and search for your appropriate group, and we'll send you a link via email once everything is posted as well. When you're not asking a question, please mute your microphone. And the last thing anybody wants to hear is if you're nibbling on some Captain Crunch in the background. So please don't forget to mute the microphone and enter your audio PIN if you joined via phone in order to link your phone call with your GoToMeeting control panel. The benefit of this is it allows you to mute and unmute yourself using the audio button rather than your telephone keypad. And it also ensures other participants will be able to see you and know who you are when you're speaking. And lastly, we're going to share at the end of our webinar the way to redeem your lunch coupon at the end of the session. So everyone's going to get one, but we want you to work for your meal. So we're going to ask you to participate. Join us in. Last thing Paul and I want is to just hear our own voices. So let me just go over the GoToMeeting control panel. So here you've got an image of the GoToMeeting control panel. To submit a question, click on that dialog box in the upper right-hand corner. Looks like a speech balloon, if you will, and just type your question. We're going to be doing our best to moderate questions and ask those. And Paul, if I'm understanding correctly, you don't mind if we ask you the questions in the middle of the webinar, correct? You don't need them saved for the end.
Nope. Yep. You can ask whenever they feel like it. And if you want to save them to the end, you can save them to the end if you're individuals. But if you want to ask them during it, go right ahead.
Outstanding. All right. Thanks, Paul. And we also, by the way, everybody, we welcome you to personally ask your question by coming off of mute. And you can also show yourself on the webcam if so desired. We'd love to see your smiling face. To do this, you click on the camera icon found in the middle of your screen or on the left side of your control panel. So you know what? I know if you'll go to the next slide, Paul, we've got a number of folks that are not Vivid members, and we want to be sure to share with you what our Vivid community is all about. So Vivid is an independent, not-for-profit service organization, and it represents the broad microfocus community globally, and it's the endorsed microfocus software user group. And Vivid's mission is to serve the microfocus community through advocacy, community, and education. So I want to emphasize that. That's advocacy, community, and education. And for almost 2 decades, Vivid has been the unbiased, trusted, and field-tested user community for thousands of HP and more recently HPE software customers. And then, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, through acquisitions, our scope has expanded from our original focus on OpenView to also include Mercury Interactive, Freshwater, and Vertica customers, developers, and partners from around the world and from all areas of business and industry. And with the merger of the HP software and microfocus businesses, once again, we're here to help our members attain the maximum benefits from their investments in microfocus. So you know what? Without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to Paul Bratlin. Paul, thank you very much, and it's all yours, sir.
Thanks. Before I jump into mine, I can't speak highly enough of Vivid. Before coming across and working for Microfocus, like Bob was saying, a little bit of my background, I was using ALM on a fairly regular basis and a lot of the Microfocus tools, back to the Mercury tools. And joining the local meetups and things like that was a great way of getting kind of the experience of, hey, I'm having this issue with the system. Does anybody else run into that? Is there a better way of handling it? So talking with other people doing the same work is always beneficial. Now that I am part of Microfocus, you can always reach out to myself or one of my teammates, and we can help you with a lot of these conversations. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough of Vivid. They usually do some great events. I'm based here in Denver. One of my teammates is in the Bay Area, and Southern California is also covered here. But yeah, so usually Vivid has some fun events, get-togethers, and things like that. It's not all the time they ask Microfocus pre-sales, in my case, to come and talk with you folks. We're kind of a satellite one. If they need us to come talk, we come and talk, but usually it's you guys talking with each other and helping each other out. So that being said, I also want to call attention to our virtual universe coming up in a little less than 2 weeks, May 19th through the 21st. Those of you not familiar with this, in years, last 2-3 years, we actually held separate Microfocus events. So if you were an ADM person, you would usually go to the ADM event. If you're an ITOM or security, starting this year, we combine all those into one event. It was supposed to be in San Antonio, but with the pandemic going around, we decided to turn it virtual. The good news for that is, as a virtual event, we're not charging for it. So if you have some time, May 19th through the 21st, you can log in, see some live events, participate in some conversations. If you want to find out more or register for that, go to universe.microfocus.com/Americas. And with that being said, let's get to why we're here today to talk. So we're going to automate complexity for release velocity is today's conversation. Like I said, I'm Paul Bratlin. Here's my contact information there. I'll go ahead and send it out later. We're going to upload the slide deck to that community page for you guys so you can see that. That being said, some of the things that we're going to show today are recorded and put in the slides. That way you can play them after the fact. If you'd like to find out more, please reach out and we can come have a face-to-face or at least a virtual face-to-face conference with you guys and do a demo and kind of dive into the nitty-gritty details today. But today we're going to be at the 50,000 foot view. So let's start talking about release velocity. So release velocity is how fast you can go from basically idea out to deploying to a customer Git. And that's really the simple way of describing this. So in our slide here, we have a very rudimentary, hey, somebody codes something, somebody has to test it, integrate it, and it gets deployed. So we have time spent doing those certain things. So roughly 7.5 hours to get that done in this example. These obviously is probably a really quick update to an application. But you can kind of see here, it takes about 2 hours to code it, takes about 45 minutes to do an integration, 60 minutes to deploy it. In between those times, as we're all kind of familiar, there's this time wasted section, right? So you have to email somebody, they have to find out that somebody's available to do a validation of security. Well, that security guy may not be available for 2 weeks, so you're waiting around, your code's sitting there and waiting. Then you get to the integration person, Sue integration isn't available for another 2 weeks, so you've now wasted 4 weeks, so on and so forth. So you've wasted about six weeks when it's only taking you about a day to get that work out, right? If everything was lined up perfect, and we know it's not a perfect world, but if you could, eliminate a lot of your time waste sections, you could get things out better, faster, and stronger, right? And as we all know, as consumers, and not only just developing applications, as consumers, everybody wants the newest thing as fast as possible, right? They want it, they want to make sure it works, they want it now. They don't want to wait, in this case, 6-7 weeks to get that new update to them. So with that being said, the industry is kind of moving to DevOps and DevOps tool chains. Everyone's got their own flavor on that, just like we were talking about time wasted and that very easy, hey, somebody coded it, integration, things like that. This is unique to almost every company. DevOps doesn't really have an official definition yet. It's very much the next kind of step up from Agile. So if you're still doing waterfall, some of this will still make sense to you. If you're in the Agile and you're moving towards DevOps, this also will make sense to you. But again, just kind of this background, so we're all talking the same language. We have Brian, Susan, and Jason. They're going to code and deploy that code into version control systems. That's going to kick off into a CI server who's going to move stuff to the asset repository and also to the delivery server. The delivery server is going to feed back to the asset repository. It's also going to deploy to development, going to feed back to CI server. Test server is going to get involved, and I'm just going to start clicking here. And as you can tell, the spaghetti mess happens, right? So this is probably a very rudimentary way to get code out into production. Yours is probably a little more complicated than this, but for background purposes, right? A DevOps tool change. Some of this could be automated. Some of this is still very manual. All of this is kind of how we see things going out. So that tool chain of deploying code. Also a little background, why are we talking AI and what is it? So AI is an area of computer science that emphasizes the creation of intelligent machines. No big wonder there. It's how can we get computers to be smarter and start doing complex and simple tasks for us. So software to do that. There's been some great YouTube videos and articles out there on how to code those and how to make life easier with those. How they do this, AI in general applications do this on pattern matching. So one of those videos that's out there is how do you get AI system to recognize a line on a screen, right? So if the first pixel is a certain color and the pixel next to it is the same pixel color, so on and so forth, let's say 5 pixels in a row or 500 pixels in a row are the same color, then we're going to classify that as a line. If the first 3 are one color, the next one is not that color, and then the next 3 are, do we want to say that pattern matches, yes or no? That's where the application comes in. And how they do that, like I was saying, is input data, right? So I'm going to feed it a picture. It's going to compare that with what it thinks it wants to see for that line. And it's going to say, is this output the same as that, or yes or no? Industries that have been kind of doing this for a while, your CT and your MRI scans, a lot of the times those are taken and fed into an AI system. And then the AI system kind of says, oh, I see this, and then passes off to a human to verify that. But a lot of that early round detection on CT and MRI scans is actually done via an AI application. Tesla released a video a couple of weeks, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago now, of what its cars see when it sees a stop sign. So all the inputs that it sees, it recognizes it as a stop sign, not a yield sign. It looks both directions. How fast does it need to be coming to slow down to the stop sign? Does it need to stop and wait for cars to pass by from the left and from the right? Okay, does it need to turn left and right? So that video is really interesting to see all the inputs that car needs and the AI reading through that to see what's the next step it needs to do. And like always, the online and the customer service side of life, if you're chatting usually with most larger companies online, it's an automated system replying back to you originally. And then if that system can't handle it, you're usually handed off to a human customer support person. So a lot of people have already kind of jumped on this bandwagon. We here at Micro Focus are trying to see how we can do that to help automate software testing. If we can automate your software testing, it eliminates the manual work that you have to do. We can automate your testing to do that testing. If that automation system can go faster than your human manual testers, and they can work 24 hours a day, that increases your release velocity. That being said, manual testing, as we all know, is not really always going to go away. So you're always going to need those bodies to get that done. So this isn't one of the 2020 movies of, hey, this is how we replace humans and move forward. But what we're seeing here is we want to make life easier, right, for everybody in the industry so we can develop better code, more features to our applications and better applications. To do that, we kind of see three people using our software, right? So on the left-hand side of this, we have the code-centric individual. They're enterprise DevOps teams, they're coders, right? They're familiar with IDEs, they are more comfortable pulling up a screen, typing in code and moving on. So we've got tools to help them automate their unit test and hopefully pass that off to the next round of people. So we next person here, we have the center of excellence tool people or the automation engineers, people that are very familiar and comfortable with coding, but are more in the QA slant of life. So these are your folks that normally right now are using UFT or a similar product to get automation off the ground. And our final persona here is a business analyst or your subject matter expert. These people know your application inside and out. They know what the business entails that application to do. They probably don't know a lot of code. Now, nobody perfectly fits into any one of these personas. Everyone's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But again, 50,000 foot view. This is how we kind of see people using our tool set. Now, all these people and businesses in general are facing challenges. One of the major challenges, and I was looking through pre-submitted questions earlier, fast-paced releases, right? Like I was saying before, customers want things now. They want it better today than yesterday. They want it, 2 days ago, not 3 days from now. So we want fast-paced releases. Part of that problem that we run into is automation coverage, right? So our automation coverage across the industry right now, good companies are, 30+% coverage. Why that's so low and been so low for a while, we see is platform availability, skill barriers on how to automate tests, and honestly, our next section here, high maintenance costs and low ROI on automation testing, right? So on our examples, and we'll talk to this here in a bit, in our examples today, we're going to be covering a simple application, and we're going to make one change to that application and watch it wreak havoc on our automation scripts. So if this happens fairly continuously in your application, if the business decides to make a change and release one, test scripts can't be reused and release two, that high maintenance cost, right? So now you're talking to your automation specialist to come in and do, hey, we changed that, you need to rewrite all your scripts. So now that's time wasted from release 1 to release 2 and version control, things along that nature. I'm going to stop and try to get some water and maybe before going to the next section. Anybody have any questions before we cover?
Hey, Paul, this is great stuff. So thanks actually for pausing. And I just want to remind everybody that we are moderating the chat section for any questions. So if you want to ask those live. And just, one of the questions here, Paul, that I want to throw out to you is, what version of UFT1 is needed to have installed for AI?
Great. Yeah, so UFT starting in 14.5.3 was our first version of AI testing, and in a couple of slides we'll get to that how we see that, how that works in UFT, and we'll kind of do a live recorded example of how that works. But yeah, starting in 14.5.3, UFT AI was turned on, I guess the right way of saying it, for mobile applications. Our most recent release, 15.01, turned on for web. So not only mobile web, but web in general, so you can do your testing.
Great. And I know somebody actually just went ahead, since Terry had shared her chat message. Somebody actually sent several questions to Terry in advance. So I'll just ask a few of those throughout the day. But whoever sent those to Terry, I think she may have shared them with the group. So thanks for sending those along to Terry. But Paul, I'm just going to intersperse a couple of these throughout. But again, I still want to encourage everybody to just throw some questions. Paul and I absolutely love that. And then, Paul, I don't want to interrupt, your energy here, but I've been doing test automation since 1998. So I might interject one or two pieces, bits of information if you don't mind. But love the stuff you're sharing. This is great. This is great.
Ask my wife and kids or anybody that knows me. My voice after a while is a little much to hear. All right. So an example, and we covered this before. Unless there's another question that pops up, we'll dive back in. But for today's example, what we're going to do is be playing around the online shopping system. So this use case is an e-commerce site. It allows you to act like you're buying, laptops or headphones or mice or so on and so forth. It's like I said, it's an Android application, an iOS application, and a web application, so 3 separate things. You can get to the system right now if you'd like by just going to advantageshopping.com, I believe, and you can pull up this. For those of you who've been around the block once or twice with UFT, this replaced our airline reservation system. So this is a little more current one, and you can go ahead and test that. If you are going to play with the site, go ahead and create everything. It clears itself every 24 hours. So I forget exactly over what time overnight it clears its system and restarts itself. Don't enter in personal information. If you're acting like you're buying something, don't put your actual credit card in there. Just a little bit of fair warning. We will purge it, but you don't want your actual credit card information in there. But like I said, we've got this application. It's an Android device. It's installed as an Android app, iOS app, and a website. So for those not familiar, UFT sees those current versions and previous versions, see those 3 things as 3 separate things, right? So if we call our attention to the right-hand side of the screen, the login here. So in Android, it's just a logon icon with login next to it. In iOS, it's login icon, login, and then we also have the cog widget. And on the website, it's even in a separate area, and the icon's different. So for those of you who haven't played with UFT or a lot of the automation systems in the past, you now have to write 3 scripts to keep track of those, right? So calling back to some of the challenges we see in the industry, this is higher maintenance costs right now. So if I want just a simple login script, I now have to write 3 login scripts to make this work. And Bob probably knows this way back in the day, back when I was out of college and testing on just browsers, not Android devices or Apple devices. You would have to do this for 3 separate browser versions and multiple browser versions, so Safari and Opera and all the fun stuff. So this is one of those industry things that has been an issue for a while, and this is that time to market challenge, right? So not only do I have to automate 3 separate scripts, I have to maintain 3 separate scripts, and I'm slowing down that release.
Oh, this is great stuff, Paul.
Thanks. Yeah, so high maintenance costs, as I was kind of talking about earlier, right? So now version 2 comes out. Do my scripts still work, right? Somebody might have changed the logon icon in the Android device, but not in the iOS device. I now have to touch that script. Now this is reducing my return of investment, ROI, because now my script just doesn't work all the time, every time, right? So now I'm slowing down the release, I'm not getting bang for my buck, and you start having really awkward conversations as a QA manager or a DevOps manager on why things are going a little slower than the industry would like or the business would like you to see. So as an example of that, here's a little recorded script that current, well, pre-14.5.3 UFT testing looks like. So for those of you who've never seen a UFT script, all we're doing is pulling up a device, we're tapping the menu, we're tapping profile, we're going to log in with AI demo 1 is the password, and we're going to type log in on that screen. And on the right-hand side, the screen is logged in. I'll pause here for a sec. So we're now logged into the system. And this is our result set from UFT. For those of you who haven't seen it before, green is good, green check mark, 5 out of 5 steps passed, life is good. Those of you who have seen UFT in the past, nothing new here. But what if we make that change, like I was saying? So in this case, what we've done is our before script, application release 1, the shopping cart's on the left, and the hamburger menu, something I learned fairly recently, the 3 lines is the hamburger menu, is on the right-hand side. Post-start change, maybe the business found out that if the shopping cart's on the right-hand side, they assume business will go up 5 to 10%. So let's go ahead and make that change. So a simple change that you and I as humans, we recognize, oh, the shopping cart and the profile or the hamburger menu swap sides. UFT, on the other hand, and a lot of you who played with these scripts, doesn't do very well with that issue. So we're now going to log in and hit the menu button. So the device pulls up, we click it, and now we want to hit profile. Well, we click the shopping cart. So now UFT is going to come back to us and say, I don't know what you want me to do because the next thing you told me to do doesn't exist. So we get the ever familiar error button. We're going to pop up our bad report, red X instead of a green check mark. And in the description here, we'll say why we didn't find it. We can't identify something called the profile there. Our first 2 steps passed, but the 3rd step failed, which is kind of a bummer, especially those of us who've played with automation scripts in the past. This was always the one to chase around. And it could be sometimes as simple as, somebody moved it 5 pixels to the left and changed login to sign in, and your scripts would break. So why did this happen? I was covering it a little before, but let's dive down into a little bit more. The physical property of how UFT recognized that changed. So the login button was moved, the hamburger menu was moved, and the shopping cart was moved. And as we can see here, sometimes even changing the Android version that was running would break the application, or UFT scripts for you. But we as humans, we saw that, right? I pointed it out on the screen, but after a while, if you were a manual tester, you wouldn't even think about it, right? If I told you to, hey, log into the system, you would go there and say, yep, that's login. Let's go ahead and click that profile button. Let's get moving. So here's where AI fun stuff comes in for us. So at a high level, AI major research areas are natural language processing, how do you do knowledge, general intelligence, social intelligence, deep learning, all those fun things. For here at Micro Focus, we're concentrating on 3 areas to see if that's going to help us. So we've got the natural language processing. Perception is how we can teach a computer to see more like a human than a computer. And machine learning, so supervised learning, how do we help that go through, and unsupervised learning. So picture this as a kid, right? For those of you who are parents or daycare or have nieces and nephews in their lives, after a while, you just kind of let the kid with a certain knowledge do the next thing, so they unsupervised learn something. Versus, as a littler kid, you kind of help them more steps along the way. You kind of lay it out for them. But let's talk about training now. And for those of you who've seen this in the past, I've changed this up, so the answer is going to be a little different. But if I can get a volunteer to tell me what they see on the screen. And really
anybody at all. Anybody at all, and we can unmute you, or you can just chat it, and we'll read it, whatever you'd like to do.
All right, I'm going to give you guys the first answer, and then we'll go to the second one. The easy answer here is dogs. Yeah, Alex got it. Good job, Alex. In reality, though, we've got 2 dogs and a socially responsible dog, because a socially responsible dog is wearing his protective gear. Now, let's use that knowledge, and now tell me what you see on the screen.
Anybody? Come on.
The answer again. Think as simple as what I just did, where there were 3 dogs. One was wearing a face mask.
All right. Hey, can I play, Paul?
Sure. Oh,
I
somebody beat you to it though.
I see 2 cats and 1 socially responsible cat.
Yep, and somebody in chat popped in there right as you were about to say that. Yep, so
All
there you
right,
go.
Darren.
Yeah. So really simple, right? You ever wonder how we as humans do that, right? Just a real 30-second conversation there, right? The first image I told you, face mask equals social responsible. The second set of images I showed that to you, your brain went, oh, okay, really simple. Face mask equals this, and let's move on. The magic of that is what we're starting to call neural networks, right? Everybody has that in their brain, and they get trained over and over and over and over to do that. How is that network created? Well, here's a baby. A baby really, when they're young, can't distinguish between a cat and a dog, or a socially responsible dog. But starting roughly about their 1, give or take, they start to know how to do that task. The reason they're able to do that is mom and dad, or grandma and grandpa, or even siblings, daycare, other friends, they sit there and they help that child, right? So first they introduce the dog or a cat or an animal, and after a while the kid starts calling everything a dog, right? Then you have to help the kid go, well, no, that's not really the dog, that's the cat. Okay, everything's a cat for a while. No, there's a difference between a cat and a dog. And trust me, I've got a 2-year-old, a 8-year-old, and soon to be a 10-year-old, and there was a lot of that doing. Now they're teaching dad how to do a lot of things, but you can understand how these things are going. And that's constantly happening to us in humans, right? Not so much with computers until AI is coming along and we're trying to teach computers how to do that more. All right, one more volunteer for this section. What's on the screen now? All right.
And we'll give them a couple of minutes. Oh,
Yep.
Anything yet? Anybody?
Think real simple, guys. Think like your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old. Well, maybe 5-year-old.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here. If no one's going to throw something in chat, I see.
Alex again.
All right, Alex.
Yep. So logins. The right 2 are Office 365 logins. The left one is, I believe, WordPress. For those of you who have been a while on that, but they're all login pages, right? And we all kind of saw that. And a lot of the times, what happens, and the first time that I had this done with me and shown, I overcomplicated this. I was like, oh no, they've got to be something, right? Nope. Simple answer, they're logins, right? But we can do that as humans. Computers, UFT and automation specialists or automation software has a really hard time with this because they're all different, right? One's a username, one's not even labeled username, right? So we've got username, email address over here. On Office 365, it's built into the login area. Passwords are there. One's got images, the other one doesn't. It's really hard for a computer to figure out what you're asking it to do there. Well, hopefully not that hard for much longer. So deep learning, right, is really where AI is taking off right now. So back 1950s-ish, AI is not a new concept, right? We've been trying to do this for quite a long time as an industry. Starting in the early 80s, late 70s, machine learning came to be the way to do it. How do we teach a computer to do more and more things? And now deep learning is a breakthrough that a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon and moving AI forward with. Well, how are they doing that? Simple answers, right? Data is cheap now. Computer memory is really cheap, so you can store a vast amount of information, and everybody is doing that. So there's a lot of big data out there. And computing power is getting cheaper, right? You can buy a lot more now in computing power than you did 20, 30 years ago. With those two things, we can create neural networks. So again, back to our example, you can train a neural network. You can feed it a picture of a cat, and it'll go through its outputs and inputs and say what's going on with this, and output, hey, I think this is a cat. And to do that, you can help with programs to get along that way. Like we were talking about earlier, this is kind of jumping in across a lot of industries in the world, right? So you have speech recognition software out there. Those of you using Team or Zoom or any of those kind of services, this is all live now. So you can actually turn on that, and as you're having a conversation, you can actually get the little transcript pop up at the bottom of the screen for those folks who are hard of hearing. That way they can read what's the conversation going across the screen. Like I was saying with MRI and CT scans, detections being fed through there, video capturing, real-time translation that's going on, and even more recently, a lot of the COVID-19 tests, a lot of companies are turning more towards an AI to run test results through. So this is becoming a thing all over the place, not just in automation software. But like I was saying, it is becoming a thing in automating software. So here's another little demo clip. And before I dive into here, any questions? This is my convenient excuse that I need a glass of water real quick.
So actually, Paul, you had shown how with UFT1, one script can handle multiple devices, but how do you actually run test on multiple devices at the same time currently?
Yep. So that gets kind of covered in this demo here. Actually, this is going to kind of do a side-by-side to walk through that in this one. But UFT has a sister application. We used to call it Mobile Center. We're calling it UFT Mobile because if nothing else, marketing people love to change the names of things to keep us all on our toes. But basically what you would do in that case is you would write your UFT script, and we have that on the screen here. And then you would run that on, in this case, an Android device first and then an iOS device secondly. So yes, we have tools to help you test multiple things at once, or one script on multiple devices.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and dive into this unless there's another question. All right, and I know I'm talking quick, guys. We've got about 20 minutes left, and I want to give some time at the end for other discussions here. If anything else pops up, or if after this you have questions, comments, or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or somebody within Vivid to get a hold of me, and we can dive in deeper to this. But in this rudimentary script, we are very much going to do what we did before. We are going to pull up an Android device, but instead of apps.util, we're going to do AI util hamburger menu click. And we're going to run this on an Android device and an iOS device. So in this case, we're pulling up a single script. We're logging in. We're launching that as an application. We're clicking the hamburger menu. We're clicking profile. We're logging in with AI and AI demo. But we're going to continue on. We're actually going to search for a computer, HP NV17T. And we're going to go ahead and do that. And as you can tell on the right-hand side, that device via Mobile Center UFT Mobile is actually being interacted with the script. In this bottom right-hand corner here, you can tell we're on an Android device. Now we're going to close that Android device, and we're going to pull up an Apple device running 11.1.2. Slightly out of date, but this does work with our current versions of iOS that are out there and also historical iOS devices. But as you can tell right here, this is the one script running both of those. And for those of you somewhat familiar with UFT, you're probably scratching your head and going, wow, that's quite impressive. I can't wait to play with this. Like we were saying, starting in 14.5.3 and all the way through 15.01 this is being available for you to start playing around with. And what we're showing here is this is what UFT came through and said, you asked me to hit the hamburger menu. This is the hamburger menu I clicked on. And that way, if the script does go haywire later in life, or you have two hamburger menus on the screen at some point, you can go back and see if your script was working correctly or incorrectly. And that's what we're trying to show there. Okay, so the next area that we're going to cover is the natural language understanding portion of AI. And lo and behold, probably the reason why I'm bringing it up is we do have something that will help you there too. So up until now, we've been talking with kind of our two left-hand side people on our personas, right? So the developers who are very comfortable writing code and the automation specialists who are very comfortable writing code. What about that far right persona, the system expert or the subject matter expert that really knows the application, but it's not really comfortable writing code, or maybe not as comfortable writing code? So this is where we're going to start talking about natural language processing. And if I was going to ask you to search for a dog in Google, we'd all come up with similar steps, right? Open a browser, go to Google, type dog in there, hit search, and let's play around with the script. You and I, as humans, we can do that fairly reasonable, right? A lot of the automation software out there doesn't do really well with that. Well, we've got something to help you there too. So in this script, what we're going to be doing is a slightly different way to write that, right? So we are now going to pull up, and these are still Brandon Mobile Center, but this is UFT Mobile. We're going to launch an Apple device. We're going to launch AOS on that, Advantage Shopping Mobile. And we're going to identify that. So what's on the screen right now is, hey, there's a shopping cart there, there's a hamburger menu. UFT is sitting there saying, this is what we have identified as icon or visual elements on there, and what would you like to do with them? So step one on the left, we'd like you to click the hamburger menu. We do that on the right-hand side in the mobile lab. Now step two, I want you to go to the profile. Okay, click the profile. Let's change our object identification center to the new screen. That way the system can see it and go, okay, that's that screen. Those of you familiar with UFT, this is not the object repository. This isn't the, hey, let's go ahead and take a screenshot of what the screen looks like now in the application and refer back to it. This is simply telling UFT what's on the screen so that it can sit there and say, you want me to hit the login button on this screen, right? Not the screen 3 screens before previously. When I'm on the screen, what does that screen look like? What we're doing now is just a couple of different ways to identify that, right? So from the object repository, excuse me, you may have multiple things on the screen that are hamburger menus, for example. So you might have different ways of identifying that object. And we're just walking through a couple of different examples here on how to do that. Now we're going to say, hey, let's search for a 17T. Very similar to how we wrote code for our test case to log in, search for a 17T computer, right? Now this is a codeless way of doing that, right? So, hey, click the hamburger menu. This is what you would tell a manual tester or somebody testing your software, right? You wouldn't tell them to do app util ... find the hamburger menu .click, right? You would have a simple conversation with them. I want you to click the hamburger menu and I want to do this. And so we're doing a couple of different things here. We're calling out the product button in the details if we want to find out. And we're going to answer the next question that are probably on people's minds here. What if UFT doesn't identify something the way I want it to? Oops. And I always hit the wrong button at the wrong time there. Let me pause this here and pull up the feedback tool. So here in the feedback tool, we can, well, not we, we're giving you guys the ability to send basically a screenshot of what's on the screen and say, this UFT didn't do a really good job of identifying what I want to call the details icon. So you take the screenshot, you're going to put it in the feedback tool, you're going to say, hey, this is the details icon I want the system to recognize, and you're going to send that to us, and we are going to use that to retrain or continue to train our OCR and our automation system behind the scenes to recognize that next time through. So this is a way that you guys can feed that data back to us so we can make UFT better for not only your company, but everyone. Now, the next question we tend to get here is, well, that's well and good, but I work in industry, fill in the blank, and there's no way that I can share proprietary information or personal identification information outside of my system without getting my hand slapped royally by management or the security folks. Don't worry, the feedback tool has an ability to mask a lot of things that you don't want us to see, and we can have this conversation face-to-face or virtually face-to-face with you guys and show how to do that. But that way you guys can feed back that information and make UFT work better for your applications. What we're going to do now, though, is switch over that script to one that we know works. And we're going to pull up another version of this, and we're going to run this. So this would be for the non-coding way of running this. In this case, just like we did previously, we're going to run this on an Android device, an Apple device, and then we're going to switch over to another Android device. Very similar to what we've done in the previous demos, but this again is the natural way that somebody would talk or how to do this codelessly. And in the interest of time, because we've got 15 minutes, I'm just going to kind of scroll through here. As you can tell here, the first time through, we got all check marks on our Android device. Now we're going through the Apple device. Life is good. Now we're going to pull up our second Android device and do the same test run. You can tell you're on the third device that you want to run or environment that you want to run, simply because that check mark is purple now and we're running through that. So it's a really powerful engine. We've done it. We are now going to feed that information back, and just like we did in our previous examples, here's our run results, and it looks very much similar to those other ones. So if you write a codeless or if you actually write code, doesn't matter. It's going to give you the same run result at the tail end of it. So again, as we're talking return on investments, right? Your developers can code in their IDE and they can start running their tests there. They can hand that off to automation specialists on the team, and they can build more on that. So that shift left testing turns into more shift right testing, and we can even get the subject matter experts involved in that testing, right? So they can go through, as a subject matter expert, they can go through and say, hey, these are the core things that we need to make sure this application does. I don't know how to automate it, but I can test it and kind of have the system record that, hey, click the profile button, click the hamburger menu, so on and so forth. And then we can hand that code back, or codeless thing, and let the automation specialist add more to it. So make it a reusable script if they want to. If not, you can leave it in the codeless state and just run it as many times as you'd like. Let's see here. Those were the highlights of the demo, and we've got a little less than 15 minutes. I know Vivit has a couple of things they want to talk about, but just a couple of things I want to point out is kind of what we talked about today. Is we were talking about functional testing. Previously, we were talking about the test automation challenges that we're seeing in industries out there, especially in software development. And hopefully we've kind of showed you guys how we're going to turn those into benefits, right? So instead of fast-paced releases causing you issues, now we're increasing the reliability of your test scripts, right? So those things run easier. One test script instead of three, right? So your automation coverage goes up, and therefore instead of keeping three scripts in maintenance, we're lowering your cost of those maintenance and increasing your ROI. We showed that today by showing you a use case of an application, Advantage Online Shopping, and the mobile web way of getting to those. And we're showing you how you can change your time to market challenge and then actually start speeding that up, right? So with our AI utils, as opposed to coding it, or excuse me, instead of going application.device, click, we can do that time to market. We can shrink those three scripts down to one, and we can reduce your high maintenance costs and give you a large ROI. Other questions that tend to come up right here, and then we'll throw it back over to open questions and Vivek can wrap up. That's great, Paul. I don't want to rewrite all my scripts with AI util. You don't have to. These scripts, UFT works as is with your current scripts, so you can continue to run those. How we envision this happening for a lot of folks is every time you do have to touch that script, why don't you go ahead and add an AI util line into that? And that way you can slowly increase your AI util coverage in your scripts, but they can run your old UFT scripts or previous version UFT scripts, and then you can start adding AI util to that. So instead of having to scrap everything you've done and pick up a new way of doing it, all you have to do is slowly make those changes. Now, if you want to scrap and code brand new, go right ahead, you can do that. But those are the couple of things I just wanted to call out for everybody there. I'm going to open it up for questions here. Go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks, Paul. I mean, just absolutely amazing. Micro Focus and AI are definitely redefining functional automation. I'll tell you, this is good stuff. So, hey, a couple of questions, and please, everybody, we've got a few minutes. Feel free to submit a couple of more. Hey, Paul, when is the next release of UFT 1?
So we actually just released 15.01 late last week or this weekend, and that was the version that allowed us to do web as opposed to just a mobile application view of that. So the next one will probably be in a couple of months after that. Those of you that have been around, well, HP, and Mercury, you kind of know we used to really be slow with our release packages. Now that we're Micro Focus, we've increased that release velocity. So it's only usually a handful of weeks or months before we do a release. Along those lines too, a lot of the times when we go out and talk with folks, we find out that folks are running, slightly out of date versions of our software. And understandably, as I was a customer not too long ago, I used to run ALM 2 full versions behind current release because HP was notorious for breaking more things when they did a major release than fixing things. So I always let other people find all those breaks, and then once they were done with a couple of patches, then I would, update my software for that. Micro Focus's view on that has completely changed. As we do major releases, those have been thoroughly tested. I guess the right way of saying it, we eat our own caviar, our own dog food, so we use our own applications for the most part to develop our own applications. So we tend to find those broken things before we release it out to the public. So definitely keep up to date if you want to play around with this. I would grab 15.01. If you're running, pre 14.5.3, you can't play with AI util at all. But if you're running 14.5.3 through current, you can play around with it.
All right. Outstanding. Great. And last question, and again, thank you for sending these in to Terry, whoever did that. So this is not related to UFT, Paul, but you may know, is there a cost for Micro Focus Virtual Universe 2020?
Great question. Yeah, this year we dropped the registration fee since it's going to be online. Those of you who are kind of familiar with Universe in the past, or the ADM Summit or ITOM Summit, since that was at a location, we tend to charge a ticket fee to get into that. Since this one's virtual, we dropped the registration fee for that. So if you've got some time, the 19th through the 21st, you can definitely register now and get in there. And watch those events through those. If you can't make events that you really like during that time slot, if you register beforehand or even during, they will make those video recordings available to you, and you can go back through and catch up with those.
All right, good stuff. And by the way, I want to remind everybody that there is going to be a virtual vendor expo at Micro Focus Universe, the virtual universe, and Vivid is going to have a booth. So please, when you attend, stop into the Vivid booth, say hi to Terry and the rest of the team who's ever there. I might be there for a while, chat with us. If we find out that you were there and you didn't say hi, then, I'll be honest with you, our feelings are going to be very, very hurt. So just stop in, say hi, say we love you, Vivid, and we'll return that love. So we don't have any more questions right now, Paul. So if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, one of the things I want to tell everybody out are the Espresso Talks by Vivid, a fantastic podcast moderated by our president of Vivid, Jonathan Wright, who does a phenomenal job, And I was very proud to be part of episode 6, where Jonathan and I chatted. I shared with him how I make working from home fun for our employees, and I make testing fun. Go on there, you'll actually get to meet my friend, the T-Rex. But and then also there was a great one by Todd DeCapua. Between Jonathan and Todd, wealth of information on performance testing. These are all varying lengths, and there are going to be more. These are just, great, bold, strong conversations of varying lengths. So please check out the Espresso Talks podcast. And that wraps everything up. If you'll go to the next slide there, Paul. Thank you. And so just a reminder, everybody, the event has been recorded. The link's going to be sent to you. Really appreciate you joining us for today's virtual Southern California area lug event, and watch for your Grubhub code that will be emailed to you. So that's it. We're closing out. Everybody have a great day. Stay well, and please stay safe. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, and thanks, Paul. Great job, bud. Great job.
Thanks.